Chapter 13. All too soon, Stanley was back out on the lake, sticking his shovel into the dirt. X-ray was right. The third hole was the hardest. So was the fourth hole, and the fifth hole, and the sixth, and the... He dug his shovel into the dirt. After a while, he'd lost track of the day, of the week, and how many holes he'd dug. It all seemed like one big hole, and it would take an year and a half to dig it. He guessed he'd lost at least 5 pounds. He figured that in a year and a half he'd be either in a great physical condition or else dead. He dug his shovel into the dirt. It should always be this hot, he thought. Surely it got cooler in December. Maybe then they froze. He dug his shovel into the dirt. His skin had gotten tougher. It didn't hurt so much to hold the shovel. As he dragged from his canteen, he looked up at the sky. A cloud had appeared earlier in the day. It was first cloud he could remember seeing since coming in Camp Green Lake. It was he and the other boys had been watching it all day, hoping it would move in front of the sun. Occasionally it got close, but it was just teasing them. His hole was waist deep. He dug his shovel into the dirt. As he dumped it out, he thought he saw something glisten as it fell into the dirt pile. Whatever it was quickly buried. Stanley stared at the pile a moment, unsure if he'd even seen it. Even if it was something, what good would it do him? He'd promised to give anything he found to X-ray. It didn't seem worth an effort to climb out of his hole. He checked it out. He glanced up at the cloud, which was close enough to the sun that he had to squint to look at it. He dug his shovel back into the earth, scooped up some dirt, and lifted over his dirt pile. But instead of dumping it there, he tossed it off to the side. Curiosity had gotten the better of him. He climbed up out of his hole and sniffed his fingers through the pile. He felt something hard and metallic. He pulled it out. It was a gold tube about as long as wide as a second finger on his right hand. The tube was open at once and closed on at the other. He used a few drops of his purest water to clean it. Then there seemed to be some kind of design on the flat, closed end. He poured a few more drops of water on it and rubbed it on the inside of his pants pocket. He looked again at the design engraved in the flat bottom of the tube. He could see an outline of a heart, which with the letter KB inched inside. He tried to figure out some way that he wouldn't have to give it to X-ray. He could just keep it, but that wouldn't do him any good. He wanted a day off. He looked at the large piles and of the dirt where X-ray was digging. X-ray was probably almost finished for the day. Getting the rest of the day off would hardly do him much good. X-ray would first have to show the tube to to Mr. Sir or Mr. Pendansky, who would then give have to show it to the warden. But then X-ray might be done anyway. Stanley wondered about trying to secretly take the tube directly to the warden. He could explain the situation to the warden, and the warden might make up an excuse for giving him the day off so X-ray wouldn't suspect. He looked across the lake towards the cabin under the two oak trees. The place scared him. He'd been at Camp Green Lake almost 2 weeks, and he still hadn't seen the warden. That was just as well. If he could go his entire year and a half without seeing the warden, that would be fine with him. Besides, he didn't know if the warden would find the tube interesting. He looked at it again. It looked familiar. He thought he'd seen something like this somewhere before, but couldn't quite place it. What you got there, caveman? Asked Zigzag. Stanley's large hand closed around the tube. Nothing, just it was a useless. I think I might found something. Another fossil? No, I'm not sure. What is this? Let me see, said Zigzag. Instead of showing it to Zigzag, Stanley brought it to X-Ray. Zigzag followed. X-Ray looked at the tube and rubbed the dirty glass on his dirty shirt and looked at the cube again. One by one, the other boys dropped their shovels and came to look. It looks like an old shotgun shell, said Squid. Yeah, that's probably what it is, said Stanley. He decided not to mention the engraved design. Maybe nobody would notice it. No, he doubts X-ray couldn't see. No, it's too long and thin to be a shotgun shell, said Magnet. It's probably a piece of junk, said Stanley. Well, I'll show it to Mom, said X-ray. See what he thinks. No who's. Maybe I'll get a day off. Your hole is almost finished. Yeah, so? Stanley lowered his shoulders. So why don't you wait until tomorrow to show it to Mom? He suggested. You can't pretend you found it first thing in the morning. Then you can get the whole day off instead of just an hour or so this afternoon. X-Ray smiled. Good thinking, caveman. He dropped the cube into his large pocket on the right leg of his dirty orange pants. Stanley returned to his hole. When the water truck came, Stanley started to take his place at the end of the line, but X-Ray told him to get behind Magnet in front of Zero. Stanley move up one place in line.